I had scarlet fever when I was just turned 8. I remember the occasion very well. I remember very clearly the time when it was actually discovered. I have almost a sort of visual memory of the doctor, our GP, coming to see me. I remember him standing me up in front of the window and looking at my chest and finding all sorts of red spots and saying to my parents, who were hovering nearby quite worried, "He's got scarlet fever." And that meant that he had to go off to hospital. I was in there for about 3 weeks, I think. I missed Christmas. I remember that my mother came to collect me, and one of the nurses in the ward who'd been looking after me, who seems to have been a rather perceptive woman, took my mother aside and said, "I think there's something wrong with his heart. He's got a very, very fast pulse, and I think you'd better take him back to his GP and get him properly examined." So that was done. The treatment at that time, apparently, was just to immobilize the patient. So I was put into bed, and I was just kept lying there and lying there. I wasn't allowed to sit up by my own efforts. And I passed most of my time reading.
Children, have you ever met the bogeyman before? No, of course you haven't, for you're much too good, I'm sure.
Originally, I was, after all, only 8 years old. My father used to go and get me a boy's magazine, every morning. I remember those magazines very well. It was The Wizard and the Rover and the Hotspur.
Bogeyman, don't let him come too close to you, he'll catch you if he can.
The room I occupied was a very small one, and lying in bed, I could see the owl clock, which had been given by my parents a year or two before. On the wall, it was a sort of wooden fretwork owl, and it had a weight, hanging from a chain, and a pendulum, and the pendulum went back and forth, making a loud tick-tock, tick-tock. And in accordance with the tick-tock, in accordance with the movement of the pendulum, the eyes of the owl would move from left to right, or right to left. Tick-tock, tick-tock. And I used to lie there for hours, I suppose, just watching this owl clock and listening to the tick-tock.
Little boy kneels at the foot of the bed.
I remember that when I was very, very small, my father taught me a prayer that his grandmother had taught him.
Hush, hush, whisper who dares. Christopher Robin is saying his prayer.
But later on, when I came to learn about the Buddha and about Muhammad, I thought, well, they've got to be considered too. So rather naively, and I think this lasted only a few months, I used to address my bedtime prayers to these 3 figures. But eventually, of course, God or Jesus dropped out, Muhammad dropped out, and only the Buddha remained. During the period that I was evacuated to the West Country, when I was in Torquay, I found in the public library there a book called Isis Unveiled by Madame Blavatsky, the founder of the Theosophical Society. And this book, Isis Unveiled, made a tremendous impression on me. And after reading it, I realized that I just wasn't a Christian. When I was about, I suppose it was 15 or 16, I had a sort of mystical experience near Amen Corner in Tooting. I was walking along the High Street, I suppose, yes, it must be Tooting High Street. I was walking along the High Street, and I suddenly experienced everything receding into the distance, the far distance, the sound of the traffic, the sound of the people. All those sounds, they just faded away into the distance, and eventually, I think, virtually disappeared. And I seemed to find myself in a sort of void, seemed to find myself in a state almost of pure consciousness, one might say. And I was walking through this. But this void and this consciousness was also me. So in a way, I was walking through myself. When I was 18, of course, I was conscripted, like everybody else, aged 18. I hadn't thought I would be conscripted on account of my heart condition. I'd assumed that I would just be exempted. But I was examined, I was re-examined, I was examined by a specialist, and I was told rather brusquely, nothing wrong with your heart at all. So into the army I went. I did have a bit of a shock. I heard things I'd never, heard before, and especially in the barrack room, the talk seems to be all about sex. We got the impression, we youngsters of 18, that married men had only one interest in life, and that was sex. After I'd been about a year in the army, I was put on a boat with my colleagues. I suppose one can call it a troop ship. It was part of a convoy. And of course we were not told where we were going. There was all sorts of speculation before we left England. Yeah, I was praying that the rumour that we were going to be sent to India was true. I arrived in India, the troop ship docked, the Bombay docks, and I just saw initially a long row of corrugated buildings. I also remember lots of cranes idly swinging on the dockside, and as we got nearer and nearer, these corrugated iron buildings became bigger and bigger, and I saw lots of little dark men in loincloths running around. From Bombay I was taken by a troop train to Delhi, and there of course once I was in Delhi, especially old Delhi, everything changed. Everything was so picturesque. So when I'd been a few weeks in India, I must say I really felt very much at home.